My friend tree, I sawed you down, but I must attend an older friend, the sun.
As the years passed, Lorraine Niedecker pursued her calling. Inspired by her surroundings on Black Hawk Island, she continued turning her attention into art. She documented the natural landscape through photography. In some cases, she used these photographs as reference images for her hobby of watercolor painting. As always, she channeled her reflections into poetry.
Oh, my floating life, do not save love for things. Throw things to the flood. Ruined by the flood. Leave the new unbought. All one in the end. Water.
At the age of 60, Niedecker's life changed in ways that would shape her work throughout the remainder of her life.
I married in the world's black night for warmth. If not repose.
Al Millen was an industrial painter who worked the night shift in Milwaukee and came to Black Hawk Island on a fishing trip. It was there he met Lorraine. In 1963, after a brief courtship, they married at St. John's Community Church. Through Al, Lorraine gained a family and a level of security that a single woman of that time so often sadly lacked. Frequently, she recorded the joy of their daily conversations, a collage of marital observations and inside jokes, and put them into small handmade books.
You can see how we return to our source.
Right, like water.
And there is never any death. After death, there are life cycles, even though inanimate. In nature, there is no blemish but the mind.
You didn't read his science fiction or he'd
What
know
are
everything.
you reading?
Fallen Sparrow. One of those books that has meaning and all.
See, if he were here, I'd shake his hand.
Yeah, but he didn't work third shift. And you think what nature does sometimes. Storms, lightning, to say nothing of the stars. Man is so puny.
I don't know. I've never felt it by looking up at the stars. After all, man has mind.
Well, something else might have mind too. How do we know that tree out there doesn't have mind?
This practice of observation and collage would soon become a central aspect of her work. After marrying Al, Lorraine was able to quit her job as a cleaner at the hospital and devote her time more fully to her vocation as a writer.
Grandfather advised me, learn a trade. I learned to sit at desk and condense. No layoff from this condensery.
For a short time, they lived in Milwaukee, but when Al retired, they returned to Black Hawk Island and built a cottage beside the one-room cabin where she had lived alone before. Placed directly on the banks of the Rock River, this new house would provide Lorene the time and space to write her most well-known work. While her most famous poem, Paean to Place, focused on her life on Black Hawk Island, other poems like Lake Superior and Wintergreen Ridge happened somewhere else, in places well beyond the limits of her home. With Al, Lorene began to travel. Because of her poor eyesight, she had never been able to drive. But with Al at the wheel, the couple started taking road trips, exploring the upper Midwest and encountering new landscapes. In 1966, Lorene and Al took the Lake Superior Circle Tour, traveling around the northern section of the lake. For the months leading up to the trip, Lorene carried out intensive research and preparation, compiling pages upon pages of notes, which documented the region's geology, geography, and the history of its native inhabitants and colonial settlers. Lorene also kept an extensive travel log, and upon returning, she would take these notes and journal entries and distill them into a poetry of bright concision, collaging these fragments into the well-wrought, finely tuned music that would define her later, longer work.
For me, the sentence lies in weights. All those prepositions and connectives, like an early spring flood. A good thing my follow-up feeling has always been condense. Condense.
Lake Superior, the first poem I ever read of Niedeker's, was the product of this process and would eventually become a critical and guiding influence. Through her, I learned to write again. Years later, as Wisconsin's poet laureate, Niedeker's Lake Superior would return me to its shores.
Major funding for Welcome Poets is provided by Fort Atkinson Community Foundation, Peter and Connie Roop, donors to the Focus Fund for the Arts, and Friends of PBS Wisconsin.